Welcome once again to Late Night Parents. I'm Ted Hicks, and across from me is none other than Rich Valdez.
Teddy Ted.
What's going on?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Pretty good. Everything is happening in the last week since the last time we've sat down and talked.
It's been a busy week.
Just a few things.
Yeah, a few things.
Just a few things. Ways to follow the show, latenightparents.com. On the site, you'll find the latest blog posts, YouTube stream, Facebook and Twitter feed, and also the archive for the podcast, if I didn't already mention that. Yes, the podcast is up there.
The podcast is up there, and it's, like you said, it's on iTunes.
And it's also on iTunes in whatever way that you want to listen to podcasts. So, a lot is going on. I will start off like this. We have a featured guest in the room, friends of ours, but for some of you newer listeners, we're going to be introducing Rob Hoskins. I will say this much: life isn't easy, especially when it comes to marriage and financials. In turn, many people who are unhappy and unhappy marriages are finding creative ways to manage. Some are choosing to postpone their dissolution until there is some equity in the house, or a retirement account grows, or one or both spouses return to work. Some couples choose to remain occupants of the same house but sleep in separate bedrooms. Other couples, more determined to get through the dissolution process, are reverting to self-representation. Self-representation provides a means to reduce the cost of litigation. As opposed to having an attorney represent you in court, you state your own case before the judge. Can these disadvantages greatly outweigh the dollars saved? And is it a wise move?
Good questions.
Proud to have Rob Hoskins from the Hoskins Law Firm in the building.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good, Rob.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Rich.
It's been about a year.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, we were trying to get Rob back in here to talk a little baseball.
Oh,
he's a baseball guy.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll just sit back and let you go through that then.
You want to change the topic now?
Oh.
Let's go. You know,
I mean, we're going to be able to tell whether he's a Yankees or Mets fan. We'll get to that. We'll get to his latest picks on who's going to win the World Series.
Okay.
Not sure if he's a fantasy football player or all of the above. But it's great to have Rob here. So in pre-pro, Rich.
Yeah, there it is.
there it is. Ding.
Every show, we have to drop the word pre-pro.
Pre-pro?
Pre-pro. Pre-production.
Okay.
We dropped that word last year when you and your lovely wife Sharon were here in the studio.
Okay.
But we did it, and we kind of kept it as a kind of silent inside joke.
Yes.
Pre-pro. So during pre-pro, we were talking about some of the discussion items, some of the questions. This is not a scripted show, but we like to lay the foundation.
Right.
So we might get into some matrimony,
I mean, there's the personal issues, the legal issues, the financial issues.
Just all that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But before we even jump into that, a couple topics I just want to throw off the top. Just to get both of your hot takes on it.
Yep.
Not sure if you guys are big on boxing.
I still didn't watch the fight.
HBO is no longer, after I think this month, October, going to be airing boxing. 45 years.
Really?
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? So it's all Showtime now.
It's all Showtime.
Wow.
ESPN Plus.
Right.
And this new streaming service called The Zone.
I mean, so why?
I think it's the byproduct of the acquisition by AT&T. AT&T is pushing HBO to focus on documentaries and scripted and unscripted shows. They got to increase the level of content because Netflix is beating them.
Yeah, but see, the thing is this. Like, as you just mentioned that, I hadn't heard it before.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Rob had. It didn't sound like it.
No.
Both of us were right away like, what?
Right.
That's horrible. I mean, come on. From pay-per-view alone, they've got to be taking in serious money. Now, granted, the last 10 years, boxing has been a shadow of its former self, it seems.
True. It's true.
So definitely their revenues had to have dropped for reasons like that. But it's on the comeback, it seems. We have some good fighters out there. We've got some talent out there.
We do. We got some
exciting people to see.
Yeah, some great welterweights. And, of course, we got 2 dynamite heavyweights. So when I said HBO is no longer going to air boxing, Rob, what were your thoughts?
Well, that was a shock. Number one, I'm not a big boxing fan. I mean, I follow it, but I got caught in the era of, you go to pay-per-view and you spend all this money, and then the fight is
2 rounds.
2 rounds. Tyson,
Tyson.
the end of the Tyson era.
Yes.
And then there was some good guys that followed. Roy Jones
Yep.
and the
Yes.
and the and then of course Mayweather in his era. But it just wasn't, as Rich was saying, boxing hasn't been what it once was.
Right.
And I kind of am one of those fans that kind of fell off a little bit, from the
Same.
boxing thing. So, but I do know that there are some good up and coming fighters that are out there.
Yes.
And I actually have a friend of mine who I went to college with, and she works with Al Heyman and his company, and met at one point. It was they were in the Barclays Center. They do a lot of their fights there, and it was it's still a very vibrant. Obviously people are still into it.
Yep.
And that's why it's kind of hard to understand why HBO would let that go. But like you said, Netflix is kind of really stepping on the toes of all of the pay-per-view channels, and they have to adapt, I guess, and do more Game of Thrones and more of those kind of things to really compete,
shows.
right?
I guess that's got to be what the case is. But like you're saying, though, see, the way I look at it is, well, scripted programming is scripted programming. HBO can buy it, Netflix can buy it, Showtime can buy it. Before anything hits the air, it's shopped around to everyone.
Right.
And it's up to them to say, oh, that looks like it's promising. Let's buy that product. Let's buy that and see where it goes. So, are we more just in a situation where, like you were just saying, Rob, HBO is just blowing everyone away? I mean, you look at the awards, Netflix got just as many as HBO.
Right.
How does that happen? And HBO gets so many only because of a couple of big shows, like Game of Thrones you just mentioned. That's a big one. Westworld. You take a couple of shows like that away, and it's nowhere near like it used to be with their original programming. So that's got to be step on it. And HBO Netflix just has money to burn. There's billions that they have to spend and buy a property, and if it's 2 or 3 episode show, it's a short series show, 5 episodes, something like that, and it's good, they'll put it out there, and they get more and more listeners this way, and that's, I guess, how they're making their money.
Yeah. Along with that, today is International Podcasting Day.
Hey.
Wow. Every day seems to be another national
day.
something.
Yes. National Hamburger Day.
Yep. And there was Hot Dog Day.
So I guess we'll get right into it. The news, the cable news, has been overrun by
a circus.
A total circus. Not to be confused with the show on HBO, on Showtime called The Circus.
Called The Circus, no.
Which is about politics.
Right.
So I stayed home on Friday, Rich.
That's where you were.
I didn't go. Besides that, it was raining outside.
Yep.
I stayed home. I wanted to watch the fallout of
the Kavanaugh proceedings.
The vote. I think there was 20 million people. If you combine all the cable news channels that were airing Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, her testimony, and of course Judge Brett Kavanaugh.
Yep.
So that was Thursday. So Friday, I stayed home. Yeah, for a couple of reasons, but it was kind of rainy,
Good
kind of one of those
That's
days.
all
And
I'll
I
say.
said, you know what?
Good.
I'm not doing this today. I'm not up to it. So along with that, so I got caught up, sucked into cable news.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to say from Thursday. So I know there needs to be 9 Supreme Court justices.
Right.
Okay. We have 8. We've
That's
had
right.
8 for a while. Okay.
Right.
We know the story about President Obama being blocked with Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
Right.
We know about all of that. But and we see this candidate in front of us.
And by the way, that was 14 months.
That was 14 months.
14
He was
months.
blocked.
Yeah.
That he was blocked. So the gentleman that had been up there testifying a few weeks ago for about 30 hours,
Right.
being asked questions from high and low,
Right.
I saw, it seemed like his evil twin went up there and became belligerent. And just, I'm not even sure what to say. I just want to toss it out
Toss it out there.
and just say, does someone like that have the temperament to go straight down the middle on these types of issues that affect the entire country?
That's a good question. I'll play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Not supporting anyone, honestly, but to his temperament at least. If I was being accused,
Okay.
I was going to say nationally, but heck, this is globally, of something that I did not do, and I'm not saying I think he did or didn't.
Right.
I'm just saying,
Right.
devil's advocate. If I was being accused of something globally of something that I did not do,
Fire and brimstone.
I'm coming with all guns blazing.
Okay.
I'm going to give you attitude. I'm going to give you anger. I'm going to give you frustration, because that's how I'm going to feel about it. Now, to your point, does that does the display of emotion negate his ability or competency to be a Supreme Court justice? I don't know. Does that mean he wouldn't be able to make a proper and unbiased decision? I think if a decision came based upon something similar to this situation, there might be a little screwed up bias. Okay, I'll give him that. But
I'm just saying, I want to hand this over to Rob.
Yeah, absolutely.
That this gentleman was there, and I'm not sure who wrote that script for him.
Yeah.
That speech.
he says he did himself. He said not to cut you off.
Mm-hmm.
He said he wrote it all himself. His handlers, no one had even seen it.
The left-leaning Dems. You're disgraceful, and you're this, and you're that, and I'm like,
Revenge of the Clintons.
yes, the revenge of the Clintons and George Soros. What in the world am I watching? Like, so Rob,
Okay.
if you're part of his team, his legal team,
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
how do you sign off on something like that?
Well, I wouldn't sign off on that.
Okay.
Here's the thing. Let's just backtrack a little bit,
Okay.
because let's look at the context of what we're looking at. We're looking at, and it was described that day by Lindsey Graham and others, that this is a job interview.
It's a job interview.
But it's not a job interview.
No.
It is, but it isn't. Right?
Mhm.
He's being asked questions because the Senate has the right to provide advice and consent to the presidential nominee. Right? So this is not a legal proceeding.
Okay.
This is a committee made up of 11 members, or I should say 21 members
21.
of the Senate, in order to then either put him for a full vote of the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
So it's their rules. It's not court rules.
Right.
So for him to still testify, he's still under oath. So in order for him to deny the charges that were made against him, I can certainly see, just like Rich said, that you would come out guns blazing, and if you know for a fact 150% that you didn't do it, you come out angry, fire, brimstone, and the whole 9 yards. The difference here is that there's such a thing called judicial temperament.
Yes.
And we've heard that term a lot. And what that is in a nutshell is that someone that sits on the bench, whether it's the New York State Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in the state of New York, or it's the United States Supreme Court, or any federal bench, you have to be someone that understands both sides of an issue, and to be able to know when and how to answer questions, or how you want questions answered. So my point being that as a judge, if there was a witness that acted, in that manner, he would have had none of that in his courtroom. He would have instructed his attorneys to the attorneys would probably be instructed to control the witness a little bit better, because he clearly was showing his partisanship.
Yes.
And that's the glaring thing. That's the problem.
Yes.
You can't call out the Clintons. You can't call out each and every Democratic senator and then come back and sort of apologize to Senator Klobuchar because you have respect for her.
Right.
But you don't have respect for, Senator Booker or Senator Harris or, go on.
All the above.
Coons or whoever.
Right.
So that's the problem in what his display, in my view, was. Because a Supreme Court judge has to be able to say, okay, even if he feels that it was a Democratic operation on the smear campaign, he should know strategically, I've got to be even keeled and handle that accusation
with kid gloves,
or with more deft and cunning, as opposed to the accusation that Miss Christine Boyd made, because he wants to deny the accusation, her accusation, but he wants to attack what he feels the Democrats are doing.
Right.
And that's got to be handled differently, but he didn't. He was a full-blown, full-bore attack, right straight through.
Full-throated.
Full-throated. And you can't, and I don't think, in my opinion, you can't sit on the Supreme Court if you can't show that, or if you show that much bias.
Right.
You just can't. You have to be in the middle.
Centrist jurist that
doesn't exist anymore.
You're kind of looking for it's I don't know.
Even if you are somewhat conservative, like Justice Kennedy was somewhat conservative. Rehnquist back, you could even Scalia. People knew that Scalia was strict. He was a strict conservative. He was a black letter law justice. But when it comes to if there were any controversial issues, Democrat, right, left, whatever, that wasn't part of his argument.
The law was his argument.
The law was his argument.
Right.
The black letter law, strict construction of the Constitution, that was his focus. And that shaped his, he didn't have a political view, but that shaped his opinion.
Right. Which
becomes a political view by the people who, follow and understand his writings.
Gotcha. This is Late Night Parents. Ways to follow the show, latenightparents.com. This is Ted and Rich. We're speaking with Rob Hoskins from Hoskins LLP, and also the Counsel Corner, one of my newly favorite shows. I will start off by saying divorce is a difficult step to take, but sometimes it's the only option. Nothing like divorce is to bring out the worst in people. So we can just ask matrimony attorney Rob Hoskins from the Hoskins LLP, who specializes in family law, and hopefully he'll be willing to share some antics and also offensive transgressions that he's seen in occasion and witnessed over the years. I will throw out this first one is, and we might not get to all these questions, but I'm just going to say, how should someone recognize the behaviors that indicate divorce is on the horizon?
That's a good question, Ted. And thank you. My wife is my partner, Sharon. We've been, practicing in matrimonial law here in New York together for the last 5 years. She's been practicing for almost 20 years, about 18 years.
Okay.
So, in this area, it's when you ask a divorce lawyer what are the signs? It's hard to say because usually when people call us and they come into our office, it's already done.
It's already done.
Right. There's no
the decision
chance
is made. Okay,
but it doesn't say it's not 100% of the time because we have had potential clients that have come in, and we actually listen to what they're saying, and we've actually recommended therapy.
Okay,
in some cases, or couples counseling or something like that. And it sometimes works, and it's not good for us economically, but if the situation is what it is, you have to be honest with people. Okay. I think to answer your question directly, the really the factors that lead to divorce are still the same. It's money and infidelity. Okay. Those are usually 90% of the time the areas where people that's the breaking point.
Right.
For some people, I mean, we can take the infidelity issue, which I've actually seen to be a little less infrequent, less frequent than it has been. And that may be because people are working through things.
Right. Or a little more tolerant.
A little more tolerant for whatever, however you want to couch it. Think Jay-Z and Beyonce or whoever. If they work it out, they work it out. That's between them.
Right.
So infidelity can be dealt with, but some people it's a deal breaker. So that's always part of it. And money is the other thing.
Okay.
When money situations change, and it's not just the lack of, it's maybe the abundance by one or the other.
Okay.
Because money can change people. A sudden influx of a lot of money to someone who's not used to it can be just as devastating to a relationship as, the lack of losing money or one person losing their job and not being able to provide. So it can be, a range of options. But in divorce, usually there's a build up. Okay. So it's not usually one issue or one thing. Infidelity is not usually a one-time thing. It's something that's been building up over time. And are there signs? You can look at all kinds of blogs and all kinds of articles that talk about, when your spouse is cheating or sick, there are different signs, and all those are pretty valid. But for a divorce lawyer, we're basically we want to know if you're at that point where there's no going back. Okay. And that's because our job is not to really get into the psychology or the emotional aspect of it. It's really to understand the couple's financial situation and how to separate those things.
Dissolution of the contract.
Yeah.
So, going, on a tangent of your response there. So you gave us two of the big ones. What about that third, which I kind of used to hear on TV? See, how valid it may or may not be, but that old irreconcilable differences.
Well, irreconcilable differences is a legal standard that it's mostly known for the state of California.
Okay.
And here in New York, it's what we call no fault. And in New York, we have what's called no fault. New York was the last state to adopt the no fault divorce. And so what that means is instead of having to put in a complaint or in the documentation, in the court papers, if you will, for divorce, all of the salacious details and what this person did, and you can avoid all of that by choosing a irreconcilable differences approach. If in the state of California, in New York, it's the marriage has been broken down. It's an irretrievable. We call it the irretrievable breakdown of a marriage over the last 6 months, and that just means you don't have to say he cheated or she cheated. You just have to say it's broken down. We can't go back, and therefore none of the details have to be released. And that's really where that comes in.
Fair enough. Thank you.
So we've asked a question to Rob Hoskins, on when do you know it's time for divorce? But my question to you is, are most cases settled outside the courtroom? And if so, why?
Well, To answer the question, yes, most cases are settled outside of court. In our practice, we try to settle every case as best we can. And one of the best judges in New York had said at a CLE, I remember hearing that 90% of her cases are settled outside of court as well. And that's because the issues that go forward to trial have to be very succinct, and you don't really want to have to go through that process.
Okay.
It's lengthy and it's expensive. Trials are very, very expensive, and not everybody wants to spend $50,000 to $100,000
right.
on a lengthy trial just because you're angry, and that's difficult. So most lawyers, you get to a point where you go through the pretrial process, and a case can be settled at any point along the way. And we always encourage people to settle, because this is not really a case that you're not talking about rights and what government action is being taken. This is between two private individuals, and you really want to try to keep it that way. Although there are issues that do need to be litigated. Sometimes you can't agree if there's children involved.
Right.
Property?
Well, there's two separate issues. There's
Okay.
the property,
Okay.
and then there's children.
Okay.
So if there's no children, you don't have to worry about it. You just have to figure out who gets what assets and to what percentage.
Right.
But there are issues that come up as to what might be a marital asset or not. And the two sides might disagree. So you might have to litigate over that. If there's a business or something like that, you may have to litigate if you can't come to an agreement. A lot of the litigation centers around custody and custody issues, visitation. That's a very highly emotional situation, especially when it comes to kids. And so sometimes the parties just will not be able to agree, and you need that third party neutral to make the decision. And the judge is going to do that. Here's the problem from the perspective of the party, though, the spouses. Each spouse, usually in a lot of cases, the emotions and anger is at a very high level, and they just want to talk to the judge, because if they explain their situation to the judge,
he'll agree with
He'll
me.
agree with me. They'll understand.
Right.
I'm very, persuasive, or let's say I'm reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm being very reasonable. She's not, or he's not being reasonable. And 90% of the time, you're not reasonable. And you have to realize that the judges on the matrimonial parts, your case is not a federal case. Your case is one of 1,000.
Right.
And they've got goals and measurements that they have to get through so many cases, and they have to close these files. And that doesn't mean that the judges don't take your case seriously. They absolutely do, 100%.
Okay.
But it's not, you're only going to get so far with that kind of argument. You're just not going to be able to just spill your side, because here's what I tell people sometimes. Matrimonial cases are probably one of the areas where both sides are on totally equal footing. And it doesn't, even if one spouse was not the moneyed spouse or the working spouse, even if you're just a housewife or you stay at home dad, no. When you walk into a matrimonial part, you're on even footing. It's not like big insurance or government you're fighting against. No, it starts out 50-50, and then we have to figure out, from there,
if it goes
more or the other. Right. Because in New York, you have to remember, when it comes to finances, we're an equitable distribution state. It's not 50-50 split it down the middle.
Okay.
There are a lot of different factors that go into, what percentage goes to who, whether an asset, as I stated before, whether an asset is marital or not. If it's not, that means you might have had it before you got married. But so for an example, let's say you bought a house before you got married. or an apartment, whatever it is. So your money, you pay the down payment, you're paying it, and then you find somebody and you marry them and you move them in. And let's say you want to put them on the deed and do the whole thing. That's great. That's wonderful. But from the day that you get married and you live in that house, the appreciation on that house from that date is marital. Right? So the difference is what's marital and what's not. That's what we do. That's what we figure out.
Gotcha.
And that's what we have to negotiate for you in the end. And what we try to do as divorce lawyers here is to negotiate. We don't think about what you're getting right now. We're looking for the future, 5 years out. What will you be paying?
Right.
What is your support obligation? What is your child support obligation? And knowing, what your income is now and projecting it out, how are you going to be living? Because, if you are the moneyed spouse, and you have to find another place to live, and you also have to contribute to make support payments. So you're maintaining two separate households in some cases.
Right.
And by all means, it's not, scot-free. It's not like your ex gets to sit back and do nothing. No.
Rake in that check.
No. It's not. It doesn't work that way. Cause
Right.
Well, she's eating bonbons.
Yes. Getting your toes done.
No, if people can work,
they got to work.
They have to go. They have to try to work.
Interesting.
So
I mean, you've kind of gone over the details a little bit, or the high level overview of what you do as an attorney when a person or a couple comes to you saying they want to get divorced. But what if they decide to go that other route of self-representation? I mean, I would think that as an attorney, your first response would be, not a good idea. Don't do that.
No way.
That's a bad idea.
But taking your own responsibilities out of it. What do you say about that?
We come across that. I mean, there are definitely cases where one spouse will come to us and the other spouse is not represented.
Right.
It makes it a little difficult as far as do it procedurally. And you can ask any attorney in any practice area, really, a pro se client, a pro se opponent, or is usually a difficult situation in a lot of cases because of the procedural aspects. I can't really say how judges and some don't care either way, but I would think that procedurally and meeting dates, that would be difficult. Now, not to say that there aren't some people that can do it. There's people of high intelligence that can probably do it, but in divorce cases, you're usually not dealing from a rational and a reasonable, position to start. So, I would advise people not to try the pro se route, but I do understand the cost and the cost savings approach that might be attractive to someone to try to do it themselves. And a couple can do it themselves, and there is a way to actually do it somewhat inexpensively in comparison. And one of the ways that we do that is we offer mediation. Mediation is a much less expensive process, but implicit in the name is mediation is you have to be agreeable.
Okay.
And that's the hardest part, right? That's the hardest part in any matrimonial situation.
Right.
But it does happen, and we've done mediations for folks, and they spent anywhere between $5,000 or $7,000, and that's it between the two of them, split between them.
Okay.
So if you look at the cost between $2,500 and $3,000, you can get divorced, and it can be done relatively quickly. Right.
But Rob, does that have to be just totally uncontested?
No. Mediation is the two of you sitting in a room with a neutral, right? So, and listening, the mediator will listen to what, you'll present what your assets are, what the marital assets are, what you have together, and there are certain things that we have to, examine. So, if there's, and let's just take children out of the mix for a second. So, if we have a house, we have bank accounts, we say, okay, Are you going to split the bank accounts down the middle? You'll take 50%, you'll take 50%. Okay, we're agreement there. So we check that off. Now we talk about the house. Okay, where did the money from the down payment come from? Just one person? Family members loaned it, or however? Did you put it together? So then we'll say, okay, you put up, 30% of it. Okay, so we look at the appreciation. We look at everything, the value of the house, and we can say, well, he or she, got the down payment, so we'll give them a credit for that, and the appreciation will be split down the middle. Right. And we'll say you'll have to sell the house in order to do that, so you can maintain, separate households, or one side can buy the other side out. It all depends on what the situation is, based on their incomes, and then you look at their retirement accounts, you look at all those different things, and you try to do the same analysis, and then you come up with a plan. And the plan is based on what you probably will have to do in a litigation sense, so that when you come and what happens is when the mediator, when you get through all the list of assets and issues, mediator what we'll do is we'll come up with a settlement agreement, and then when the settlement agreement is in place and signed by both parties, then that goes on the uncontested track.
Gotcha.
So each court in each borough and county has an uncontested part where the file goes in, and it's done a lot quicker because there's a settlement agreement. They make sure that everything's covered. They go through the checklist, and once the settlement agreement has everything in place that the court needs, they'll approve it. They'll issue the judgment of divorce, and you'll be divorced. In Nassau County, you could get it done if you really went that way. You could 8 months, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. In the city, not so much. Maybe a year.
Is that just because they're busier?
Just because of the volume. That's it. It's
right.
It's just because of volume. Divorces last a year to 2 years because people argue. They change their minds. It's a full blown war in some cases. So. And that's where it gets expensive, because if I have to call the other's, your ex's attorney or send emails, then you're going to be charged for that.
Right. It's on the clock. Right.
So
I know I'm going to go a little off topic. Rich, you can ask question regarding, 9 regarding the horror stories, but I want to throw this out to you, Rob. We don't have to answer this now. I think this might be a podcast.
Uh-oh.
Because I've had a couple of my friends, one who's in Georgia, one who's in Florida. Anytime I've mentioned before in the past that we're going to speak with Hoskins Law Firm, we're going to speak with matrimonial attorneys, and, this is a show for, I like to say this is a family-related show.
Absolutely.
Late night parents.
Parents.
That's us. But I got to go in on the one item they always hound me about. The question is, how come the laws don't favor the dads when it comes to custody, when it comes to all the above?
Sure. Well, the only answer I have for that is that it's based... Because the law is still, the law is not, obviously with what you saw with Judge Kavanaugh's nomination in the hearing, there are certain notions that are still prevalent under the law that men they're supposed to do certain things in society,
right,
and women are supposed to have a certain position in society, if you will,
right.
And so the law has still kind of hung on to that a little bit, and mothers and children don't tend to be separated, especially at the early ages, right? And men are usually working when children are in those early ages.
Okay.
But now more and more men are raising babies,
right,
and raising their children, and more women are making more than some men, and there are cases where the woman will be paying child support to the man, and there are stay-at-home dads that might find themselves in that situation. So the law, in some cases, will recognize that.
Okay.
And so that's it. But if you fall into those traditional, quote unquote, traditional roles, the laws will still kind of lean towards the mother and the child stay together. Child support is paid to the mother. Now, this has been an issue that we've been talking about since before we started this practice together. And, there's just no way, and this is the real question that your friends are asking. How do I pay? I don't have a problem paying child support,
right,
but how do I get the money to the kids and not give it to her?
Okay.
Yes.
That's the problem.
That's
yes.
the problem.
There
is no answer. There is no other way. You can't put it into an escrow account and have somebody else direct it, because now that would be insane. The court is not going to handle your money.
Right. No.
There's not. If you want to give it to an attorney to handle you, then you've got to pay fees.
Right.
And you can't do it. The only way to do it is you send a check to the mother of the child, and yes, she's going to get her hair and nails done with your money. It's just going to happen.
But can she go buy the BMW?
She should not be buying the BMW.
Right.
Because the kid cannot look raggedy.
Right.
The kid cannot. The kid has to be clean.
Yes.
The kid has to eat. The kid has to be in school. The clothes have to be. Now you can buy those things. You can buy food. You can buy clothes. You can toys. You can do all of that. But you still have to because child support is mandated by statute. It is in New York. It is 17% of your income.
Right.
For the first child.
Right.
Okay. And it scales, in proportion with the next child and so forth. So, and there's, it looks at your income, and that's all the state can do. All the state can really do is say, look, we know you've got to support your household, and you've got to support that child. You've got to be financially responsible for that child. So, like I said, the hardest thing to do is to realize the fact is there's no way to not be able to give it to the baby's mother.
Right.
There's just really no other way to do it. I've been trying to figure it out, and if I figured it out,
you'd be the man.
I would be. I'd have a line of guys.
Yes, you would.
From here to around New York City, but there's just no way to do it.
Do mothers have to show receipts or anything like that? In
the very, very particular cases, where the court really wants to see that, but. In a lot of cases when you're not talking about the Supreme Court, you're talking about family court.
Right.
And the family court is probably busier than the state Supreme Court. I shouldn't say that, but with these issues, it's, one case after the other. It's after another.
Right.
And they're just not equipped to really
volume alone.
Handle. Yeah, the volume is intense. It is very intense, and the court staff, the court clerks, the attorneys, the judges, they deal with its high level of emotion. People act a fool right there. If you've ever been in the waiting room, Kings County, Queens County Family Court, it's probably one of the worst experiences you'll ever see, because not only are people acting up, but the kids are there. They're right there in the stroller 9 times out of 10. Sure. And that's we practice in family law, but I really am disappointed every time I go to a family court.
Sure.
I've actually covered cases in criminal court, and they're actually kind of fun because just a quick side. I covered a case in a criminal court one time. I met the defendant in the hallway, and we walked into a courtroom, and he knew everybody in the galley. Like, he knew everybody sitting there waiting to be called. And he's, high-fiving and clapping hands. It was hilarious.
Wow.
And, because it's just kind of that thing. There are days where it's like that. But you kind of know what to expect in criminal court. It is, what it is. But family court is very, for me, to see those kids and the parents just kind of, because I always say you got to be able to come to an agreement,
right?
And that's what judges really want. Your parents. Mm-hmm. Be reasonable with each other,
yes,
and come to an agreement. Mm-hmm. Don't make the judge decide. Somebody that you don't know, because I guarantee
you're not going to like the judge's decision.
You're not going to like the decision,
and neither one of you might like it.
Right, 9 times out of 10, both of you don't like it.
Right.
And who do you get mad at? You get mad at your lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to tell you before you go in, if the judge makes the decision, you're probably not going to be happy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. All right. So, all right, I'm going to ask you a two-sided question.
Uh-oh.
Just examples that you can speak to. We'll say an example of a good outcome and an example of a bad outcome from your history.
Okay. I can tell you there was a case we had and it was actually a case of gray divorce. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Gray divorce. There had been, I don't know so much now, but there's a tendency for older folks who've been married for quite a while to start divorcing.
Okay.
Senior citizens.
Okay.
And so the issues vary, but in this one case, it started off very rough, very, very rough. There were some issues between the two of them, and we had a client, and it took quite a while. The spouse changed attorneys and so forth, and it was a very difficult time for him. And and you're talking about people on fixed income, so
right.
So now we're only really dealing with pension plans and 403Bs, and right. That's it. We're not dealing with current working conditions or anything like that. So the financial issues are very, very finite, and it lasted 2-3 years. I think it was 3 years, and it was very difficult. And there were at points where he was unhappy with us because things go slow, things don't happen right. You go into court for a compliance conference or something like that, and it doesn't go in your favor.
Gotcha.
So, but what I always tell clients is, when we get started, this is going to be probably one of the most difficult things you ever go through. And I told him that, and it was. Mm-hmm. But I said, at the end, you will be in a great place. Okay. You will get to that happy place again.
Okay.
And I kid you not, this gentleman now has moved out of state, and I see pictures of him. Mm-hmm. He's got a new house. He's got a dog.
Right.
He is just smiling from ear to ear. And when I see him, when he comes back, mm-hmm. and I see him, he can't stop hugging me.
Okay.
Because he finally,
he got over that hump.
He finally got through, and he did win. He got some quote unquote wins.
Right.
He got artwork that he wanted out of the house. He got to keep his car.
Gotcha.
He got to, he got a portion of her pension.
Gotcha.
And so it's not a lot of money, but he says every time the check comes in the mail, I look at it and I just start smiling because he has, I said, listen,
it was his win.
Entitled to it.
Right.
Rob, I have to interject and find out if
sure.
that person that you were speaking about, did he get the white picket fence?
Does he have? I don't know. I'm sure he can put one up.
Okay.
If he
all
wants
right, there
to.
you go.
Okay. Hey, wanted to jump in here and say this is Late Night Parents. Ways to follow the show, latenightparents.com. We are speaking with Rob Hoskins from the Hoskins Law Firm, Hoskins LLP, and also Counsel Corner. I know we're running short on time. Tell us about Counsel Corner.
Oh, absolutely. We're right. My wife and I, we started doing a show here at WGBB. WGBB. Back in June. We did 4 episodes, and we talk about family law and matrimonial law, and we're hoping to come back and get back on the schedule this fall. We're going to open it up to some other areas of the law.
Okay.
And because the one thing that I want to encourage people is to definitely, think of us as a resource. You can call us, you can email us with really any topic. And I do this online as well because I see people
free legal advice?
No, not free legal advice. but we
what is that number again?
We are able to point you in the right direction. If you have a real estate issue, if you have a criminal case, my friends are superb defense lawyers. Mm-hmm. I have superb real estate attorneys that I know, that I've worked with in the past, and I know, and they are really good at what they do. So you can look to us for all kinds of information with regard to that. Contact us through our website, HoskinsLLP.com. You can email us at info@HoskinsLLP.com. And you can call us here. We are in Nassau County. 516-522-2616 is our number here in Nassau.
I think you have a presence in New York also.
We have a New York City office. You can reach us at 212-776-1330. We have the flexibility. We can meet folks. We're on 3rd Avenue, but we can meet you in any location, Penn Station.
Nice.
So you really. We handle a lot of cases out of Manhattan. We handle Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau, Suffolk. We try to keep it in those areas. We have folks in Jersey that we can refer people to as well. Not a problem. And like I said, I think that it would be very good for folks to know a lawyer.
Yes.
And not just if you need you're buying a house and you need a real estate attorney, but if there's other issues.
Right.
You have your nephew gets pulled over for DWI.
That lawyer has a network, people.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's the key. And I have a network. I have classmates that practice in all these areas. I have friends that practice in these different areas, and they're really good at what they do. It's very easy.
Perfect. Rob, we want to thank you for joining us.
It's always good to be with Ted and Rich.
Oh, man.
Welcome back.
It's like I said.
This is a good show.
Negotiating with this guy for a year.
You've mentioned it a number of times. He has mentioned it a number of times.
I'm like, hey, we got to do this. Hey.
I know it's going to happen sooner or later.
Ask the lawyer. We're outside, in post-production, post-pro.
Post-pro.
But, hey, I want to just share this one last story before we wrap it up. October 3rd.
Okay.
Which is Wednesday. The wireless emergency alert is going out on our cell phones.
I've been getting those already. I get some emergency alerts.
We're going to get the emergency alert from the president.
Oh, wonderful.
Donald J. Trump.
Well, does he have, unfettered access to this? I hope not. Not like his Twitter account.
He's going to let you know how the Dems are and how crooked Hillary is.
Has he said what time this is going to go out?
I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but as we know, October is Cybersecurity Month, and we just wanted to share that this Wednesday you're going to get the wireless alert. If you have any questions, go to FEMA.gov or FEMA.gov/emergency alert test.
They're using their emergency alert service to broadcast a message from Donald Trump.
This Wednesday. How do you like that?
That's very scary.
How do you like that?
There's so much.
So for people that say, hey, I wasn't informed on this show, so on Wednesday, you just remember if you're listening to this podcast that, oh my goodness,
when your phone goes, everyone's phone's going to do it at the same time in the subways and the trains and the buses.
This is a presidential alert. Oh my goodness.
So he's live streaming his Twitter feed to every phone, whether you have Twitter or not.
Whether you have it or not.
Oh my goodness!
If someone could take the phone away from him,
he'd be so much better.
Tie off that Twitter account.
He'd be so much better. I don't know, Rich. What you got going on this week?
This is just a maintenance week. Nothing crazy, nothing special going on. I am reviewing some hardware from a couple of vendors. Got a dash cam from Cobra. I'll be reviewing, writing, posting some about that. Got a home security system.
It arrived?
It arrived.
Oh,
it is set up. It is configured.
Your home is smart?
My home is smarter.
Oh.
And it is more secured.
Yes.
That was from Life Shield as well. They provided that so that I can do a review and write up of that equipment.
Okay.
So that'll be a couple of weeks going out. I want to give it a full test run and use it.
Hopefully in the month of November, maybe we can get a member of their team to join us for a quick call.
That is the plan.
All right. Rob, what do you got going on this week?
Oh, well, we just have more cases to handle. So,
Okay.
Please give us a call if you have an issue, matrimonial, and we'll
Awesome.
certainly we'll be able to help you out.
I will say, I hope I never have to call you.
I know.
I hope you don't either.
Except to get your number to give to a friend.
It's so funny. We were putting together the questions, and my wife was looking on my shoulder, and I was just like, whoa, hold on. I was telling her, stop.
It's
This
nothing
year,
personal.
we're going
It's
to celebrate 19 years. We're nowhere
terrific.
near Rich's
Congratulations.
27,
28
this year,
Oh, okay.
and
23.
23.
Yeah.
So here I am in the rear. I'm in the rear.
You're the Ute.
I'm the Ute. Hey, we got less than 30 seconds. One last question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Millennials and marriage.
Yes.
Millennials are kind of...
They're waiting.
Yeah. They're waiting.
And they're waiting a little bit longer, but they're accumulating things. So the need for them is not to worry about divorce, but the prenup.
Got you.
That's a question
That's
for
the issue.
next time.
That's for the next time, the prenup.
The prenup.
One of my buddies got married, just recently got married, and he went the prenup route. And I was like, but what do you have?
Right.
Well,
You know?
Yeah.
But, hey, this has been a great show.
Awesome
Rob
show.
Hoskins
Thanks,
from the
guys.
Hoskins Law Firm,
Rob, thanks for joining
from
us
Counsel
again.
Corner, all the above. I am
Ted.
the real Ted
With
Hicks.
you.
I am the real Ted Hicks on Twitter. And you are...
Late Night Rich.
And you are...
Rob Hoskins.
All right, Hoskins Law Firm.
That's the room. Everyone,
Have a great one.
Great week. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
listening. We'll talk to you next time.